Okay, here we go. The last two propositions on the ballot. Proposition 24, which deals with consumer data, I'm British all of a sudden, consumer data privacy. And then Proposition 25, regarding cash bail, specifically replacing the cash bail system with a different system. So, all right, Prop 24, is that me or you?
That's me.
That's you.
So Prop 24 is really weird. It sounds really straightforward in that it is basically limiting how businesses can use your privacy information. In case you don't know, in case you haven't looked at your phone recently and seen ads for stuff that you were talking about pop up, people are collecting data on you all the time. And if you go to websites now, you'll probably get a lot of stuff like, we give you cookies. And then it'll say like, do you accept the cookies or don't sell my data? Which is a really weird line, but basically they're saying that in giving you the cookies, they're using that to sell your data to advertisers, basically to know what you might click on and basically to give you targeted ads, so to speak. Some companies make a lot of money off this, and so California has implemented some data privacy stuff. The reason why they ask you that is in large part because of a law that California passed earlier this year. And the guy who petitioned to make this law a thing is also the guy who put this on here. Because right after that, he was talking to some bigwig at Google or something and decided these laws aren't strict enough. And in some ways, I agree with him. For example, there's some of the penalties that can be levied on companies. First of all, they're four digits, which given what some of these companies are making, I feel like is a slap on the wrist, basically. It also enables them to basically get out of it if they address the violation within 30 days, which seems like a really long time to say, oops, my bad, and fix it in order to face no penalties. That seems pretty weird to me. And so it closes that. It also increases the penalty for if you do that with data from a minor. Still within that sort of 4-digit limit, though. It's not very much.
Really?
Yeah, it doesn't actually. These numbers still seem like slap on the wrists overall. Not to say that means they shouldn't be made stronger, but you're kind of and there's also some weird stuff in here where they say they can't keep data beyond what's reasonably necessary, which is vague, but then there's some data that they can actually keep longer without asking you about. And there's a lot of little things in there where it's actually beneficial to the group that's taking your data. I also find it fascinating that no large data selling corporations like Google or Facebook or anyone else hasn't actually weighed in on this. They haven't said, no, don't vote on that. We'd never use your data that way. They're just kind of sitting back and letting it happen, which makes me kind of suspicious that maybe they kind of want it to happen because they'll benefit in some ways, which is why I'm voting no. There's just a lot of weird stuff in here, and it creates a new organization to keep an eye on this stuff, and it's just no, thank you. This all seems extremely complicated. The biggest thing is the weird points where it's this data they can actually keep longer, or this data they don't have to report, or you can ask them not to do this. I was well, how nightmarish is that process going to look, right? I don't imagine all of these are going to be as simple as a nice little button yes you can or no you can't right when you visit a website, which are kind of annoying to begin with in their own way. How many more of those buttons are there going to be? How deep in the account that you're going to have to make with these companies are you going to have to dig to find these things to tell them no? Because a lot of this is allows you to tell them no. It's allows me to tell. Why don't you just make it, and it's just
why don't you allow me to tell you yes?
Yeah, there you go. There's a good one.
Stop sharing my data.
So it's just really weird. I don't understand. This is another one of those where it feels like the law in place hasn't been given enough time to breathe for us to figure out if it's actually doing enough. And in looking at these, I can almost guarantee you it's not doing enough if you're giving them 30 days to fix things, and I'd like that to get closed. But again, if that's all this did, I'd vote for it, but it's not. Like I said, there's weird stuff in there that lets them keep some data longer and not have to report. No, there's way too much mumbo jumbo in here for me to feel comfortable with.
That's exact. The word mumbo jumbo came to mind while trying to wrap my brain around this one, which is funny because when I think about consumer data privacy and having, like, when you get those pop-ups, it's like, read the terms of use, read the terms of agreement. Well, you said we could sell your data. And I'm like, I didn't say that. I just didn't want to read all that crap. So that's kind of how I feel about this. Like, it's not a user-friendly proposition.
Mm-hmm.
They rarely are,
sure.
but this one especially. And there are also all the ads. We got one in the mail today. I threw it away because I threw away all the ads. But it was like, it had this like child on like a laptop, like like
Gosh,
smiling.
I hate all these ads.
And it's like, vote yes or your child will be sucked into the dark web. You know, like something ridiculous. Like, don't you care about children?
It's like those dang ads with the sad puppies. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's just what all these are. Yeah.
Those ads. Okay, so this one
Not
did not
cool,
elicit that kind of reaction. It was more just like, come on. So anyway, I am also planning to vote no on this one. I had a question mark originally just because I was so confused by it. So thank you for helping clarify some of that. Because yeah, it really just comes down to all the different twists and turns and
like,
odd things.
Listen to this description here. The proposition, in some cases, this proposition adds new requirements. For example, the proposition requires businesses to now notify consumers of the length of time they'll keep personal data. Oddly specific, I don't really know if I need to know that, but okay. In other cases, it removes requirements. For example, businesses could refuse to delete student grades or other information under specific conditions. What does that even mean, dude? What do you mean they can just say no under specific conditions? How many of those weird rules are there?
Student grades?
Yeah.
What business has student grades?
I don't know, but they have them, and apparently they could refuse to delete them under this, whereas now they can't.
That's
Look,
a
there's
weird
so
example.
much stuff in there, but like,
Yeah.
no. If this is supposed to help with privacy, why are there these weird concessions where you're like, you can keep this one. You specifically don't have to delete this if you request it anymore. No. No.
Yep. So that's a no.
Yeah.
That's a no. So I guess we don't care about children.
Nope. Sorry,
But,
kids.
You know what? Keep student grades. Go wherever. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Stop going on those porn websites. If you want to protect your personal data, kiddies.
Oh man, I'm sure porn websites aren't even part of this situation.
Oh, I'm sure they are. How do you think they know which porns to recommend? Yeah, they want to know. I'm not going to try to make up any porn titles off the top of my head, but I probably could.
Oh, I mean, Proposition 24. There's a title for
Do you order more pizza or more Chinese food? We've got the porn for you.
Oh gosh. Oh, Target.
I guarantee you that's a thing. I guarantee you 100% that's a thing.
I'm sure it is, but it's just like, I didn't want to see the children.
He didn't want to know.
The children are going to the dark web.
The children, yeah.
We're going to the Pornhub. It's bad. We're voting no. That's the bottom line of this. We need to get out of this conversation.
It's just getting
We're gonna
good.
get flagged.
This
We're
is
gonna
the
get
best
flagged on
one.
YouTube.
Yeah, don't mark this one for children. Just saying. This is that we're ending with the best one. You waited all this long.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we're gonna shift gears now. So yes, that is a no on 24, primarily because of the mumbo jumbo and porn, apparently. Okay.
Yes, there it was.
All right, so Proposition 25. So Proposition 25 is interesting. It's replacing cash bail with an assessment/algorithm process. So what does this mean? So currently, if someone is arrested, they're allowed to bail, basically to pay a bail, and then come back for their court date. If you can't afford the bail, then you might have to sit in holding or use a bail bond service. So right now it's an unfair system. If you're wealthy, see Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin. I think that was that last year? The whole celebrity moms.
I think it started last year. I don't even know if it's over yet. That's
it's
how
one
the court
example
system moves. Yeah.
of thousands, of examples like that. So the wealthy benefit from this bail system because they just pay a check and then they can go wait it out at home until their day in court. whereas someone who does not have that money either has to rely on like fundraising amongst the family, bail bonds, which is a huge industry, or they have to sit and wait. So it's not a fair system. It's particularly unfair on the side of impoverished populations, specifically people of color. So it's bad right now. So what's being proposed in this proposition is to replace cash bail bond or cash bail with a risk assessment or algorithm, which basically means that based on the crime that's being charged or evaluated or whatever, based on the thing that the person did and their record, will say the judicial system will say, hey, you know what, this was your first misdemeanor, go ahead and go home and then come back for your court date. Or, hey, you've done this thing multiple times, you're gonna have to wait here. So the risk assessment would either be some kind of like assessment done by people within the court system, or it would be what they're leaning towards is creating an actual algorithm. And an algorithm is like kind of what we just kind of talked about with data privacy. You know, it can generate an answer based on numerous variables. It's basically like a math equation. Just, you know, if you go, is the answer yes or no to the type of crime that was committed? Yes, okay. How many times has it been done before? Over this many we go here, under this many we go here. So that's what an algorithm does, is it goes through this sort of maze of question of yes and no options and then spits out yes, you
42.
The meaning of luck. It spits out, yeah, that's exactly what that is. So it spits out the answer to will you stay.
To a question you're not really sure is the right question.
So, okay. So on paper, in a utopian society, well, in a utopian society we wouldn't need any criminal justice, but
Sure.
in a semi-utopian society, maybe this could work. Maybe this could work. But my questions are, who's creating the assessments? Who's creating the algorithm? Is it really going to be more fair than the cash system? I personally don't think it will be, because of the racism and biases that are already so deeply entrenched in our systems. I'm hesitant to hand over a new system like this where biases are going to be implicitly placed into them, and maybe even explicitly in some cases, unfortunately. So I am planning to vote no on this because while the cash system is crap, I don't think this is going to be much better. I would like to see something else. I don't know that this is the answer, and what this does is it creates more of a sense of objectivity, but I think it would be a false sense of objectivity. I think it would be something that people could point to and be like, oh no, there's no racism in the algorithm.
Data to back it up.
It's data.
It's data. Data can't be racist.
But yeah, data can't be racist. I mean, let's take a look at IQ tests, for example. Tons of implicit bias in those. So that's kind of where my brain went, is thinking a human still got to make these things. And I didn't really see enough evidence or enough information about like how these assessments would be created, who would be in charge of doing that, what's that going to look like. It seems like a half-baked idea. I'd like to see it stuck in the oven a little bit longer with some more. And if there is more information out there about it, please send it my way. I couldn't find it. So yeah, and there would also still be a judge that would be present for these cases. So the assessment wouldn't be the end-all be-all. So the assessment or the algorithm would spit out an answer, but a judge could still overturn it or say, no, the person has to stay. So there is that. What I find really interesting about this one is that bail bond companies and civil rights activists are on the same side for completely different reasons.
Some civil rights.
Some civil rights.
Some
civil rights, yes. So certain civil rights activists and bail bond companies are on the same side, which is no. Bail bonds, because they're like, that's our money, that's our industry, that's profit, what are you doing? And civil rights activists for some of the reasons that I just spoke. So currently my vote is a no. The current system does suck, and I like to see reform in it, but this is not it.
Yeah. Also worth noting, it'd probably reduce the amount of money the government gets too, because they wouldn't be making bail money anymore.
But if you
For
create an
whatever point
algorithm,
that's yeah.
yeah.
For whatever that's worth. I think the points you made about the algorithm being potentially racist were really good and something I hadn't really considered. Because, yeah, if the data shows that black people are statistically more likely to run off in that period, they just don't really have a choice, right? Like, if it's that way because they have an inherent distrust in the system, which they probably should, it doesn't take any of that. It doesn't matter. Like, if the stats say that's what it is, then they don't get a chance. A lot of people have been referring to this as taking away someone's right to bail, which is an interesting point I hadn't really thought about. And I still don't know exactly how deeply entrenched the right to bail is in our national sort of legal framework. But that certainly is a good point. Like, the thing with bail is you have a choice to pay it, right? Now, it can be said it's something ridiculous, but you still have that choice. Under this, if it's no, you're in jail, see ya. Like, and the fact that a judge is still over it is a plus and minus, because the bail system now has a judge presiding over it who decides what that bail is and decides what is reasonable. So that could be a plus or a minus. It's not just some cold, unfeeling thing. They can take into account the person, the situation, and all that stuff. But they might also be a racist. And that's the same problem under both of these, yes and no, right?
Sure, yeah.
The judge is a plus and minus in both of these for the same reason. I'm leaning towards no as well. One thing I find fascinating is, as I've gone through this, I've looked for the NAACP specifically, and they're, not that I vote strictly with them, but they're on the opposite side of where I think they would be a lot. Like, I assumed they would be for this because the bail system is inherently classist and racist, but no, they're against it. Probably because of a lot of the flaws that my wife pointed out, and because it is, in a sense, taking away certain rights. Like, they were against 23, when I think this is fascinating to me, especially because, you know, the Democratic Party is stereotypically the party where, you know, the black party, the party that's more friendly to African Americans and where African Americans tend to lean nowadays. And in so many of these, the Democratic Party will be like on one side and the NAACP will be on the other. And it's just very fascinating to me. And I'm not 100% sure if it's because the NAACP wants them to go further, or if the concerns of sort of the trickle down of these increased costs are what they're worried about. If they are worried that dialysis clinics are going to close down and these aren't going to be available to people of lower income. If, you know, they voted no on 15, which is like, oh, it's a tax on businesses. If the NAACP is like, it's a tax on people renting from businesses, like all of our black business owners, you know, stuff like that. So I just found that very fascinating as I was going through this. Some of them were like, yeah, okay, like the parole, basically increasing the jail stuff, but they're like, no, let's not do that. And I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I just thought there was at least one other example that I'm not thinking of right off the top of my head, but it was just interesting. And seeing them on the no side of this definitely sort of is swaying me more to say no. Because if they're, like Sam said, a lot of the civil rights unions are against this because they say this isn't a good enough fix. Like, we shouldn't half bake this and say, woo, it's fixed, when it's really not going to fix the problems. You need to actually get something that will work. And if we need to put up with bail for a bit longer in order to get there, we put up with it this long. It's not ideal, but we don't want to put because if you put this out there, people are going to be like, it's fixed. Like, they're not going to want to come back to it, you know?
That's exactly, so. Yeah. That brings me back, actually, this was in the previous video, but in Proposition 22, if yes, I think it was a yes vote, it'll be almost impossible to amend it at that point.
Yeah, that's true. It would require like 87.5%.
7/8 majority.
Which is ridiculous. Why is that a thing in California's Constitution? That's insane. But I mean, 15s. We've talked a lot about all the bills on here that are repeats. Like kidney dialysis didn't work, or they came back with a different one. The elderly people being able to transition, like to buy a new home without the tax increase, like it didn't pass, it came back. You know what the common denominator of those things coming back is? They failed the first time. Nobody is like, we succeeded, let's see how much further we can push it. They're like, dang, we failed. We got to go back to the drawing board and figure out something better. And in some cases, like in 19, I think they really did. So yeah, I think the best way to get this fixed more is to push back and say, no, this isn't good enough, and
Yeah.
actually get something better. So yeah.
I agree. Yeah, that's where I come down to it, as you probably heard a lot in these videos. I want something better. So, and I've noticed that in previous elections that's how I voted. I voted no because it wasn't good enough.
And you don't want to let good be the enemy of perfect, but sometimes you do have to say, no, this is not good enough, because I know it's going to be a Band-Aid. It's just going to cover up the problem so people aren't thinking about it. Like, well, we increased it by this much, or we did enough.
Exactly.
Isn't that enough? Like,
yeah, yeah. Like, we're not ever going to get to perfect, but we can do better.
Yeah.
For sure. We should. So. Okay. Well, well, if you have made it this far with us, we appreciate you. If you haven't made it this far with us, you just sort of skim through, we appreciate you too, honestly. So please let the conversation continue. I know a lot of us are going to be submitting our ballots early.
Very soon.
Try to. Yes, you can put them in the mailbox, drop them off at your
Wait till this comes out, because you wouldn't want to vote without yours truly giving his opinion.
I mean, yes, why would you put the pen to the ballot without knowing what Sam and Dave have to say? But we do appreciate your support and your feedback. So please continue to comment, and we hope to do this again when another election comes up, or if there's an especially saucy topic. You hate that word. Sorry. But if there is something you'd like to hear us talk about, a movie perhaps, or
movies don't exist anymore. The theater industry is dead.
We can talk about that. But anyway, thank you guys so much. We love you. Please be blessed and get your votes out there. And yeah.
Bye.
Bye.